Why is the traditional debt versus equity binary no longer sufficient for UK business owners seeking growth capital?
So businesses don't need debt or equity, they need capital. Capital sits on a spectrum that includes both debt and equity. As you move through that spectrum, the risk goes up, the cost goes up, and the amount of control that a business owner has to concede goes up. So at one end of the spectrum, you might have, say, property finance, where you have to provide a charge over your property, but as long as you meet your payments, generally, the funder will leave you alone. At the other end of the spectrum, you've got equity, where they will want to sit on your board and tell you how to run your business. And then somewhere in the middle, you might have cash flow lending, where you might have to provide monthly management accounts and quarterly covenant testing. And obviously that's a form of control on your business. So as you move through that spectrum, the amount of control over your business increases, and obviously the risk goes up and the cost goes up as well. The question that business owners need to answer is, if I need to raise finance, how much risk is involved, and am I sat in the right part of the capital spectrum? But there is debt that has equity-like characteristics and equity that has debt-like characteristics. So it's about picking the right level of funding for your business.
What is the practical impact of regional funding disparities on businesses outside London and the South East, particularly concerning equity finance?
So in terms of businesses, it's an undoubted fact that a lot of businesses are concentrated in London, and that is where the majority of financial institutions are located. It does make it harder for regional businesses to access capital, particularly where they don't have an advisor to help them access that network of financiers down in London. In reality, a lot of businesses at the moment who are raising capital are finding it difficult because there is this AI boom, and a lot of funding, especially in early stage equity investment, is going into AI-backed businesses. That does leave a gap in the market, particularly for different sectors and businesses that are more regional and not focused in those sort of central hubs such as London. That does mean that it's even more critical to get professional advice in order to help you access the markets.
How should owner-managers approach the risk-cost control triangle to make funding decisions aligned with their specific business objectives?
So any type of funding has to balance how much risk there is, how much it costs, and how much control the funder has over the business. A business owner has historically looked at the historic low interest rates and said, I don't want to give away much control. However, these days, with interest rates being higher, there needs to be a balance between those three areas, and ultimately it's going to depend on the individual circumstances of the business. That does make fundraising more complex and actually make it not necessarily a binary calculation that you can do on a spreadsheet. It needs to take into account a plethora of different factors, and those factors effectively should be considered, and you should take some advice over what's best for your business.
What are the opportunity costs of delayed funding, and how do they complicate the overall fundraising process for SMEs?
So one of the challenges that businesses have faced lately is that fundraising seems to take longer and longer, whereas typically, say, a fundraise into a non-change of ownership transaction might have taken up to 3 months. Now they can take potentially up to 6 months. And if it's a change of ownership transaction, whether it's a management buyout or a sale or an acquisition, can sometimes take up to a year. Obviously, with owners then distracted by the fundraising process, their business starts to take a hit, and that then impacts on the fundraising process and starts a negative feedback loop. So it's imperative that when you have a process, that actually you're able to work with somebody that can get it done quickly and efficiently and basically allow you to focus back on running the business.